Welcome back. Every Friday, it seems, we've been saying the same thing, another wild week in Washington, but we have not seen anything like this. On Monday, former acting Attorney General Sally Yates testified before the Senate saying she warned the Trump administration National Security Advisor Michael Flynn could be compromised by Russian blackmail. However, Flynn remained in his post for 18 days after Yates's warning. The Senate Intelligence Committee is issuing a subpoena for Flynn and his former business associates to testify in relation to Russian meddling in the presidential election. And then things got really weird. The president fired FBI Director James Comey. Then the president contradicted the Justice Department, the vice president, and the White House staff about why. Democrats and some Republicans questioned the president's firing of the man leading the investigation of the president's campaign's possible connections to Russian intelligence during the presidential campaign. And today, the president raised the question whether his private conversations with the FBI director were recorded. Joining us with more on the Week in Washington is Cheryl Wilson, the chairwoman of the Sarasota County, Manatee County Democratic Party, Dr. Robert Borilsky. There you go. A Russian civil military policy expert. He is also the president of the Sarasota Institute of Lifelong Learning, and ABC7 commentator Steve Sabato. Thank you all for joining us. You know, you get two different things from folks out there this week. Either they are shaking whether the pillars of our democracy are at stake right now, or it doesn't bother them. Steve?
Well, you know, I would think that we're starting to get used to the fact that we have a president who can say anything at any time, and he may or may not inform his subordinates, including the press corps, and it would appear that this is just going to be the way business is done around here. You know, as far as the security of the pillars of democracy, I seem to think that we'll get through this.
Cheryl, do you have the same confidence?
I don't have the same comfort level. I do have confidence in our democracy, but I think what this week indicated and illustrated is that we have a president, when it really comes to important issues such as the foundation of our democracy, such as our institutions, such as the integrity of our judicial system and its independence, that he really is not prepared or has no comprehension of what he is there to defend. And I think that the fact that it is very significant situations that have arisen this week have just emphasized what's been going on for 4 months now. And I agree with Steve. We were getting used to it. We knew that things weren't going to stick to him. We knew that there would be another story each week. But this one was a big one. This was serious. This was our institutions.
I'm curious how this is playing overseas, particularly in Russia, and you are the expert on that. And you watch Russian television and their media all the time. What is the perception there about what is going on?
I watch it so much that sometimes I miss the perception that's going on in my own country of this stuff. You see the Kremlin being very cautious. Putin's spokespersons are not saying much. They're watching and waiting, because I know Putin's style is extremely managerial, tough. He has tremendous discipline with his staff. They work hard. He's very careful about what he says. He's probably wondering, do I have a competent America over there, or is America in trouble? That's going to be a little bit of a worry, believe it or not. As far as a lot of the talk shows are laughing and having a good time, rather than panicking.
What did you make? The Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov was at the State Department and the White House this week, and Lavrov was asked about the Comey firing, and he gave this kind of like interesting response to it.
Which was, is he really fired? I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, I mean, he seemed
That's what Lavrov said.
Kind of like a smart you-know-what.
But you notice something there. The guy speaks great English. He doesn't need an interpreter. And so he's a smart diplomat. So Trump and Tillerson and Lavrov and Ambassador Kislyak and I don't know who else was there. They were just having a damn good time.
It was also interesting that U.S. press was not allowed into that Oval
the Russians commented on that.
But the Russians were.
And that's another institution.
Yeah, Russians commented on that today, you see, because the admirers over there who even think that Russia can't become America because Russia's Russia, they admire the fact, you know, that we debate, we argue, we have a strong press and all of that. And they didn't, I think they didn't like that.
You know, Steve, you shared with me a little bit earlier this very interesting poll that just came out on public opinion when it comes to the coverage of all of this. And it's interesting because the way it breaks down is if you're a Democrat, you like the press being as aggressive as it is in terms of questioning what's coming out of the White House, but if you're a Republican, not so much. Yeah,
it is interesting, and it's just another way of looking at the obvious, which is we're in a polarized state here. The Democrat loyalists are convinced that we have a complete mistrustful person running our country, and they are supportive of the media and believe that they're holding people accountable. And on the other side, you've got the Republicans who think that that the press is getting in the way of progress. But from my perspective, what we're seeing here is this incredibly incompetent understanding of how to communicate with the public. I mean, the right of the president to change the FBI director is not disputed by anyone. It should have been a slam dunk for the White House. And instead, because of the way the information was managed and the contradictions that the president himself has had between his press corps and what he has said, and then contradictions with the new head of the FBI, it's just a mess.
Let me push back. It's not just the way they did it. The Democrats, Cheryl, correct me if I'm wrong, and even some Republicans are raising the question about firing the man in charge of the investigation into the president and his campaign.
I think I said to you before we came on the air, I'm not here to defend Jim Comey. I think he made some very serious errors in judgment. I think his performance was less than ideal, but the timing and the information that led up to it that we began to hear is what got our concern. And I would also point out, I think if we went back 8 months, 12 months, 18 months to when a Democrat was in the White House, my guess is that those numbers, though they may have shifted a bit, is that the Democrats were still defending what the press was doing, what the press activity was doing, and the Republican Party was still objecting to a free, or maybe I shouldn't say a free press, but an attentive press.
We are just getting started with our conversation, and we'll pick it up right after we get a check on the weather. Stay with us. Welcome back. Quick. Why did President Trump fire FBI Director Comey? What should we make of Sally Yates' testimony in regard to General Michael Flynn? If you're just joining us, we are discussing the week in Washington, and our guests are Cheryl Wilson of the Manatee County Democratic Party, Dr. Robert Borilski, an expert on Russian civil military policy, and ABC 7 news commentator Steve Sabato. Sally Yates, I mean, basically, she testified before the Senate, couldn't say in more stronger terms about the warning that she gave the White House that the national security advisor could be compromised by the Russians, and it took 18 days to fire him. Steve, you watched the testimony. What did you make of it?
Well, the first thing, regardless of your politics, you have to give her credit for going through some very tough questioning, and for, at the end of the day, being an American patriot. Her principles were never shaken, and I think that, again, regardless of where she stands politically, there's no question that she's a very principled and dedicated public servant, and exactly the kind of person that we want in those jobs.
Contrast couldn't be more striking, because she knew what her job was. She knew what she was defending, and she was there to do it. Now, you know, she had been fired previously, so there was nothing left there. But that couldn't have been a comforting testimony to the president.
Dr. Borilski, what do you make of this issue now in terms of what we know about Michael Flynn? I mean, the video of him with Putin from last year, I mean, we've seen that before. I mean, what are either your suspicions or the fact that despite all of that, he made it to the White House as national security advisor?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many questions here, but I think this really boils down to Trump being an outsider, not having the team in place to help him pick people. Because, you know, we've got sort of teams of pro-Democrat, pro-Republican, foreign policy advisors sitting in think tanks all over Washington. We change a presidency and we bring in a Republican. That typically you'd pull from people who are already known in the establishment. If you come in like Trump from the outside, you don't really know how to do that. You're suspicious of that. You start trying to pick this one, pick that one. You don't really know what you're doing. So I blame so much of this on simple incompetence because he really wasn't the head of the Republican Party and wasn't used to dealing with filling all these jobs through these groups of people who are pretty much there in Washington.
Yet I will quote Kellyanne Conway, who is much derided in the media by some parts, but I remember her saying during the campaign when that tape came out with candidate Trump, people don't care about what offends them, they care about what affects them. So for the people who are watching this right now, who are watching their investments or trying to figure out how to pay their monthly bills, why should they care?
Well, they're going to care. They're going to care. Here's what I will say when I'm looking at that. Is this Trump rally over? You know, I've been pretty aggressive personally on trying to manage funds. Do I cash in because I don't know what's going to happen if we get into a situation where our government really is incapacitated? You know, that when you get to that point and you get an economic slum, then we'd really feel it in Florida.
And the other half, Cheryl, is that there are people in Manatee County, in Bradenton right now, they're just trying to make it through the month. And they are already pretty jaded in terms of what's happening in Washington.
They are, and I think our party, if we didn't learn that in 2016, then we lost an opportunity because we need to pay attention to that. But there are also other values that we have. There are things that affect me that might not be the stock market. It affects me when women's issues are challenged. It affects me when education is impacted. It affects me when religious and racial tones come into the world we live in, the society we live in. So there are things beyond just the stock market, although I watch it like most Americans do, but we're affected in how we live by a lot of other issues.
And I would add to that, I agree with what you just said, and I would add to that the trends that we saw leading up to the election that the media missed, the populist uprising, if you will, has not gone away. Those trends are still there. The discontent, the American public's discontent and mistrust of the establishment is still very much there. So the question then becomes, how is the White House and how is the Democratic Party now reacting to what's going on, and how are they appealing to what I believe is a continuum? I don't believe that the populist trend has gone away. I think it is still very much there. How the parties will identify or exploit that populist trend remains to be seen.
I remember a couple of weeks ago we had former Congressman David Jolly on this broadcast, and I believe he said to you, Cheryl, that this is a perfect opportunity for the Democrats not to just say no, but to come up with their own answers for health care and other issues. But right now, we are not even talking about the health care bill or tax reform or tax cuts or military spending. If we keep going in terms of what's happening right now in the White House, all those issues seem to be put to the side because the national media is going to focus, understandably, on every single tweet and every single new event that comes out of really an extraordinarily unpredictable White House.
You're right, but let's go back to that Pew Research. Again, if you're a Republican, you think that the media is overly obsessed and is covering this to the point of getting in the way of governance. But if you're a Democrat, you're thinking that, you know, we need to hold these people accountable. What they're doing is not right and undermining the pillars of democracy. So my point is we still have a very discontented public out there that has very little confidence and faith in the establishment in Washington, in the media establishment, and it's a volatile period that we're living through.
So, Cheryl, what do Democrats do right now? I mean, there was a die-in in front of Congressman Buchanan's office.
And it was kind of out of date this week.
Right.
You know, I think the populism that you're seeing on the Democratic side right now and the activism that you're seeing was designed or is designed to survive until we can have another election. We had to protect health care. We need to look at our tax structure. We need to defend our interests in that tax structure. But what is happening in Washington has been just as effective in slowing down the agenda. You know, our goal is to slow that agenda until we can get people in office again who are going to promote the ideals and the beliefs of Democrats. But what the Trump administration has done has been just as effective in slowing his agenda.
The question, you know, Republicans succeeded, and it paid off just saying no to Obama on everything. Doctor, do you think that the Democrats would be wise just to try to block and slow everything down at this stage?
You know, I'd shift slightly. If either party really knew where we want to take the country, it would be great. But we have a dearth of good strategic answers about achieving growth, about dealing with certain foreign policy problems. We don't know. Neither party knows.
So that basically...
I mean, this is a serious issue for us. We don't have a strategy anymore.
So that leads us to the melodrama that's playing out in Washington.
Yeah.
Without everything in terms of your populist issues being really addressed.
But there's a lot of drama out there. To use your example, these demonstrations against Vern Buchanan. Now, while that might be effective optics, okay, the fact of the matter is anyone who is following this legislation knows that what's going to come out of the Senate is not going to resemble what came out of the House. So this is part of the drama that has nothing to do with what's really going on.
All right, let's take a quick break, and when we return, we'll have final thoughts from our guests. What does President Trump's firing of James Comey mean for the FBI investigation into possible collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia? Should a special prosecutor be appointed to the investigation? Our guests join us right now for final thoughts. So, Steve, what do you take away from this week?
Well, it has been quite a week. I guess my first thought is the White House really needs to get its act together. We are having Nixonian comparisons thrown out there. People are already beginning to talk about impeachment, and we are being totally distracted from the actual business that needs to get done. We need a health care bill. We need a budget. There's serious business to be done in Washington, but if we don't stop the drama, nothing is going to be accomplished.
Cheryl?
I thought it was very ironic that the word that the president used to describe Jim Comey was a showboater, when that's what we have seen for a campaign and now 4 months of a presidency. As I said earlier, I think what I take from it is that the behavior is nothing new, but the impact and what it's having an effect on this week hit home to a lot of us.
And still, whether you are, especially with your organization, you are in touch with a lot of people who have moved down here to retire and who want to keep in touch with what's going on in their community, and they have been successful. Do you get any kind of feeling in terms of, look, we're just going to sit on the sidelines here, or are they getting concerned about their investments and the future?
Well, I'm going to say that I'm not all that different. I'm going to go back to Russia a little bit. They're watching cautiously now because although they want improved relations, they need an effective partner on the other side. And whatever our critics are out there in the world, they don't want an incompetent America or one frozen, not able to do anything.
Well, is there any appreciation or acknowledgement, or do they believe that they set a lot of this into motion?
I wonder on that one because there was deep hatred, I'd say, between Putin and Clinton. And they did not want to see her in office, but they expected her to be in office. So in a sense, they were firing shots across her bow. Hey, we can dig up dirt on you, so you better behave yourself or something. Now they're looking out, they're saying, well, Trump came in, but he can't really just come and deliver everything we want. That's not going to work. That's a silly idea.
I guess the bottom
It
line
ain't
there is
gonna
be careful what you wish for.
But also say, hey, it's great that we have a two-party system, that we're arguing about this, and that you can't just set yourself up as dictator.
All right, we have to
That's
leave
the
it
high
there.
point.
Thank you all for being here tonight. Cheryl Wilson is the chairwoman of the Manatee County Democratic Party. Dr. Robert Burilski is an expert on civil-military relations with Russia and president of the Sarasota Institute of Lifetime Learning. And ABC 7 commentator Steve Sabato.